Hey fellas, I know if you're here you probably already know all this, but very quick introduction in case the algorithm decides to bless me with a sudden uptick of attention. I'm SleepyHenry and I have a spin-off of Thomas and Friends where they're all human called Ask the Famous Ape. I started in 2015 and I'm currently on hiatus, but I somehow managed to develop a small but respectful following, considering what it's about. Most people are aware of the more topical stuff about it, and that's fine, but there's also some pretty deep and intricate lore. I'll put social media links in the description so you can find out more if you want. So anyway, I posted an Iceberg meme for my AU on Twitter, and someone on Tumblr asked me to explain it. So here we go. If something contains sensitive content, I'll put a trigger warning on the screen while I read the title. You're welcome to skip over anything. I'll also link the transcript in the description in case you want to read that instead of watching a video. This is my first time making a lore video for my series, so please let me know what you think or if there's anything you'd like to know more about. Videos like this might be a good way to still provide content while I'm on hiatus, so yeah, if you guys like it, I might do more. Okay, done with that, so let's dive in. First layer. Thomas and Percy are adopted brothers. Thomas and Percy being adopted brothers is probably one of the most common headcanons I've seen out there. In my AU, they're adopted brothers. So far, these two are the only Shining Time kids who officially consider themselves siblings. This is a very topical one and easy to figure out or find out yourself when first looking into my AU. Toby and Henrietta are married. Again, really common headcanon. Like Thomas and Percy's siblingship, this is really easy to infer. Gordon has a bunch of siblings. This one's topical because Gordon, in the actual canon, has a lot of siblings, so it's not hard to guess that would carry over. He has 31 in total, though several of them had accidents on railways, so not all 31 are still alive. Duck has a bad leg. They say he waddles, but he doesn't really, except he does, at least as a human. Second layer. Thomas and Ryan are dating. While technically a headcanon, personally I don't think this is too far a jump from canon just because of how they interacted in Lost Treasure, but if I start explaining my reasoning for that, we'll get way off topic. It's pretty well known because Thomas is obviously the main character, so anyone he spends time with will get more screen time. Gordon's abusive father. Similarly to Thomas, Gordon's one of the famous eight, so the non-railway aspects of his life are more commonly shown. It's also a fairly big part of his character and why he acts the way he does. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Canon Gordon had an abusive dad, however that would work. Henry is biracial as a reference to his hybrid basis. To me, this is a semi-topical one because it still relates to canon in a way. I'm not a train nerd, so I might get the terminology wrong in this, but essentially, Henry isn't based off of any real specific engine, post-rebuild, but a fictional hybrid. Go read his history on the actual wiki. It's really weird and kind of wild. But anyway, about his human version. Yeah, him being biracial is a reference to being a hybrid. Also referencing that is the fact that he has heterochromia and vitiligo. Third layer. Henry was a model once. This is more of a fun fact, really, but it's not as well known since Henry's, Henry. It's also a nod to when he used to be more vain. Keyword more. Edward legally adopted Bill and Ben. To be honest, this one could easily be on the second layer, but over the years, Edward and the twins' screen time has become kind of minuscule. Seriously, they didn't even interact on screen from... God, I need to actually figure that out. Hang on. Okay, Edward... I might be wrong on this because I'm just reading his wiki page, but Edward didn't interact with Bill and Ben until after their little introductory episode, I'm pretty sure, until Hunt the Truck, which was in season 23, I think. Point is, it had been a long time since they interacted on screen, and it probably will be a very, very long time until they do it again. So the point is, people knowing these characters and the relationship is less likely than, say, Thomas and Percy. I actually once had someone tell me,
"Why would Edward interact with them? They're mean. They need to stay away from him."
So, yeah, this goes on the third layer. There's also the matter of why Edward adopted Bill and Ben, but that's still to come. Duck's last name is Montague. If I were to try and guess someone's last name, I would probably never guess it was the same as their first name. This is also why Duck prefers to go by his nickname most of the time. Edward and Gordon's one-night stand. Maybe this one should be down another layer, but Yeah, Edward had a thing for Gordon in like kind of early days of the railway and invited him over for dinner, some wine, and I'd elaborate more, but I don't really want you two to throw a fit. But know this, it was definitely a one-time thing. Henry dropped out of beauty school. Remember when I said Henry was a model? This is part of that. He modeled for a friend's art exhibition. He met said friend at the cosmetology college he attended in his younger years. Unfortunately, for several reasons, mostly related to mental health, he had to quit and move back with his parents. Cranky is a veteran. Cranky fought in the Iraq War, which is also how he became paralyzed from the hips down. The lore here is actually based on a real veteran's experience. James's self-destructive habits. In the show, James has shown himself to be reckless and thrill-seeking in several instances. I interpret this as a self-destructive streak, and it manifests itself in a variety of ways. One of those ways being self-harming. The Duck, Douglas, Donald feud. This one's funny, but also kind of sad. So basically, when Duck and Donald first started dating, Douglas got mad jealous. Not in the romantic way, obviously, but because his twin brother was spending a bunch of time with someone else now. He's more dependent on Donald than vice versa, and during that time, he absolutely hated Duck and Donald to quite a similar degree. Which was a huge 180 because prior to that he liked Duck, thought he was a laugh. Duck felt bad, but Donald insisted that Douglas was just being a baby. This one-sided grudge continued until Douglas saved Oliver, still not sure how that happened, so don't ask, and Duck gave him a big sobby hug, and that sort of opened the way for dialogue and the three resolving their differences. Fifth layer. Ryan and Gordon are very distantly related, but no one realizes. Mostly a joke about how the fandom tries to play it like all these engines that don't know each other are related when trains don't really have biology. Remember Gordon having all the siblings? Yeah, his family tree is a mess, but Ryan's on there, somewhere, very distantly. No one's figured it out though. Maybe one day Ryan will mention his surname around Gordon and Gordon will be like, hang on a minute. Henry's abusive relationship. Henry was in love with Gordon for 15 years before they finally got together, and in that time he tried to quit that attachment and date other people. Didn't work, obviously, but one of these relationships was pretty horrible and toxic, and this person treated Henry terribly. Clarabelle and Duck's mom are an item. Yeah, so one day Duck's mom, Holly, was on her way to visit Duck and took Thomas's train. Clarabelle was ticket inspector that day and thought Holly was positively delightful. Holly, who was basically flirting without knowing, felt similarly. Clarabelle asked Holly if she'd mind if they rode together, since Clarabelle doesn't have her own seat. This was probably a lie. The two struck up a conversation, stayed in touch, and, well, it's not official, but Clarabelle keeps going to these knitting conventions on the mainland that Cranky says aren't real. The needlepoint convention is, though. We just want to make that clear. And every time Duck sees his mom, she's talking about Clarabelle. So, yeah. Sixth layer. Sir Handel and Peter Sam's biological parents. This one is really grim. To put it shortly, their dad murdered their mom, Duke's daughter, and got sent to prison, after which Duke took custody of the two of them. If you want to read the full version of this, I'll put a link in the description. For the most part, I try to keep my AU lighthearted, and this is definitely more distant backstory lore, so you can guess why I, nor Peter Sam or Sir Handel, would bring this up very often. Cranky's attempted suicide. This whole layer is kind of dark. Cranky was engaged to be married before he went to war, and when he came back, he thought that was still on. Turns out, no, his fiancée was cheating on him, and when she found out he was in a wheelchair now, she openly admitted it and ditched him. This, combined with, war-zone-related PTSD, sent him into a severe depression, and, well, he tried to kill himself. Thankfully, one of his friends regularly checked on him and found him before it was too late. Seventh layer. James's pregnancy scare. The only sad one on this layer, so I'll get it out of the way first. I haven't talked about this much at all because it's a sensitive and potentially controversial topic. A while into Edward and James's relationship, James missed a period. If you weren't aware, he's trans and is on testosterone. James assumed that his ovaries were basically deep-fried and useless, so he didn't bother with birth control. And then he got pregnant. But he didn't want to have a kid, so he made the extremely difficult decision to abort the fetus. Edward was supportive, of course, though not without some sadness at losing what would have been his first biological child. The whole process was traumatic and sad, in particular because of how badly it triggered James' dysphoria. How Duck's dad died. This sounds sad, but is actually more of a funny one. This is purely based on how he died in my Sims game. So in Sims 4, elders can become overexerted from physically intensive actions. Physically intensive actions. He had a heart attack after said physically intensive action, and that's how he died. To this day, Duck doesn't know. Who Skarloey had a threesome with? Probably the second biggest mystery of this AU and one of my favorite gags. This happened in their early 20s while the two were technically broken up, and Rheneas normally wouldn't make such a fuss, but apparently the people involved in said escapade still work on the railway. So, Rheneas wants to know, and a lot of my audience apparently wants to know. Actually, I had someone bribe me with lunch one time. I was in the area and they wanted to meet up, so I was like, okay, sure. And then they bought me lunch and I spilled the secret lore. Yeah. Duncan's pregnancy scare. I probably should have worded this one differently, but Duncan isn't trans, so it wasn't technically his pregnancy. He once dated this girl and, well, he got her pregnant. With twins! She didn't keep them, but for a while there, he thought he was going to be a father, and he wasn't all that enthusiastic about it. This one is mostly for laughs and is based on a dream my partner once had that Duncan, yes, Duncan, the small abrasive Scottish train, granted he was human in the dream, apparently, but you know, still, got her pregnant with twins. So yeah. 8th layer.
Cranky's real name.
This one is truly the biggest secret in my AU. Not even Fire Cooking knows this one. In universe, the only ones who know Cranky's real name are Duncan, Salty, and the Fat Controller. We're talking about people on Sodor, obviously. Outside the universe, in real life, it's only me, my partner, and 1 or 2 people I told years ago that I don't even talk to anymore that probably don't remember it. So it's safe to assume that no one knows. I'll give you this though, he shares it with another character on the show. Actually, you've all been good sports though, especially through the hiatus, so I'll finally give you guys this one. His real name is